All right. So, Amy, what do we, we're gonna hold off on the executive session just to get
The
through
end? Yeah.
stuff, so we don't have to ask everybody to step out.
Is there
So do we
anything?
wanna go right into, Russo Topman? Do you wanna do that one first? Okay.
We haven't accepted the
Do
agenda.
we have, all right, I'm sorry.
Well, is
Is
there
there
any
any
addition?
additions or, changes to the agenda?
I make a motion, we accept the agenda as written then.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks. Good evening.
Hi, how are you? Yeah.
Can you say your last name?
Paulsonello. Joe
Oh,
Paulsonello.
that's a mouthful.
Thank you very much.
No, we just sounded out, yeah. Okay.
So Mr. Paulsonello is going to give us a little update on the status of the Russo Topman property. And this is not any kind of a regular hearing, it's just an update on that. He'll let us know what that is. If you have a quick question, we're going to try to keep it fairly brief because we've got a bunch of other things to jump onto. And then if there's anybody in the audience that wants to speak to that, we'll do it real quick. But it's really just giving the commission a little update.
Good.
Okay.
My name is Joe Paulsonello, Inland Professional Corporation. I'm a licensed site professional, and I've had a lot of experience in doing environmental and wetlands issues. I've been contracted by basically, call it maybe the estate or the family that has the ownership of the property down there through their attorney, and I'm working with the real estate professional, Jay Nuss, on there. And I fortunately spent some time with the agent. Amy come down, review the files. I know of the enforcement orders and the past history that's going on there, and a priority for concerns about the parking and the vehicles and things like that. So we've done inspections down there. There was just a DEP strike force site visit investigation that was conducted down there, and we were all down there. We've already have the, I think it's John Russo, his area is all basically cleaned up. We've gone through there. There was concerns about empty tanks and storage of equipment and leaking things and that type of stuff down there. So I've also, in between, but although I'm not working for Topman down there, I've been communicating with young Russ down there. He's, as he was ordered by DEP and the strike force, he's removing his equipment, and I've been periodically inspecting that, so the whole process down there, they're in the owners are in the process of selling the property, so anything, obviously, we're gonna have to address any of the conservation issues, but also anybody purchasing a property will want the 21E to be done. As far as if there's any past contamination down there or subsurface investigations and things like that, so I've been on board, I'm on board to advise the owners what they need to do to come into compliance and prepare that property for, obviously, somebody buying it or a bank financing it, that type of thing.
And you're dealing with environmental issues, not, I mean, that's what our concern is here tonight, so.
Environmental issues, all wetland and environmental issues.
Okay.
I know there's been enforcement orders, and there was a previous order conditions in there, so.
Yep.
And I know the concerns of the board on the 21E oil or any of that hazardous material concerns down there. I've also been in communication with the deputy fire chief, Elliott,
Yep.
Mr. Elliott, talking to him. So I'm communicating with everybody, and I'm available to, I've been available to your office through the agent as needed, and I'll keep doing inspections down there because I know that because of the DEP going down there, Russ Topman has to comply, he has to comply to make sure everything associated with any concerns down there to 21E has to be removed and addressed.
Okay. Penny?
I just have one question, because I'm not quite sure if I understood. I do understand the property's up for sale. If the other issues, the enforcement order, the drainage, all that stuff, if that is sold, is that going to be corrected prior to the sale, or would, if not, then the problem goes with the sale, and the prospective buyers would have to be aware that they're,
Well, as far as any concerns for oil or hazard material, that has to be taken care of before any
Yes.
sale. That has to be. Nobody's, right now they're concerned, and it's kind of a good thing that DEP come down with the strike force, because that
Yeah.
enforced that with everybody. That needs to be addressed. We had already talked to them about that, and my agreement was that, working for them, I would address that concern.
okay. I just want, if it does get purchased, if there's outstanding issues, that the purchasers realize you're purchasing those.
I know the 21E issues, oil and hazardous material, will be
Yeah, but
dealt with.
aren't there some other issues down there?
Well, the orders go with the owner, so it's
Yeah,
gonna follow the.
no, I
chain
know,
title.
but I can't tell you how many times we have somebody come in and say, I didn't know.
Right, so anybody that purchases property is encouraged to do due diligence so that they
Yeah.
know what they're inheriting.
Okay.
But it'll show up on the chain of title.
But the other part of it is the owners, before they're gonna transfer, as they've been advised through their attorney, they're gonna make sure they have a documented evidence, everything's been cleaned up and
Okay.
documented,
Yeah.
or else they don't want the recourse to come back to them.
No.
As the property owner, they're always responsible.
Well, I thank you, I'm glad to see it's
All
slowly
right.
starting. to
Thank you,
move.
and I appreciate the cooperation of the
Can I just
commission.
roll through here for, Lisa, do you have any,
Thank you very much for the update, and I don't have any questions at this time.
Jim?
Appreciate the update. Are there any, like, timelines or goal dates or anything that we're working towards, or?
I think it has to be, it was within 2 weeks, and that was almost 2 weeks ago, that DEP mandated through their strike force that something be done.
But,
So a lot has been done.
are there any other dates going forward that we're kind of targeting or looking towards?
I think that before the next step we couldn't do a subsurface investigation until we knew any potential sources were removed there. And that's being done right now, so our next step would be come in and do a subsurface investigation to make sure there's no.
But does that, is it, like, to Jen's question, is that something that takes 6 months to do?
No,
or-
no, 2, 3, 4 weeks, once we're scheduled to do that.
And maybe we'll get updates of all of this? or-
Absolutely.
Okay.
In fact, I'll have, because the commission, I'll be working in that area, I'll have to get approval from the commission, or at least a temporary permit to go in and put wells in and stuff.
Okay.
Amy, do you want to add anything to this at this time?
I don't think so.
Okay. So again, if anybody in the audience has a question, we'll try to do it, but fairly briefly. So, anybody out there for the Russo property? Good. Just a couple quick ones. So, the buffer zone to the marsh, one of the questions that I've had on that since it was built, originally that was a contractor's yard and a mossing yard that extended all the way back to, there's a dike back there now.
Right.
And then when the MBTA built the train, they used a portion of that property for mitigation, and they created, we call it Russo, and it was the construction of a marsh
Right.
in that area. When that gets built, and Mr. Clark's in the room, who was on the commission at the time, maybe he wants to give a little input. Is there now, should there be a 50-foot buffer from that marsh, or is it something less than that because that was constructed up against a pre-existing construction yard?
I think that's something the commission has.
Do we know that? I mean, I've been trying to look a little bit back. This has been going on for quite some time. I asked a couple of former agents. We tried to look at some of the orders that went back with the MBTA. There's a lot of paperwork. but I really am not seeing anything that clearly says, the state has a 25-foot buffer. We have a 50-foot in our bylaw, but you took something that was stretched out quite a bit further, and then they created a wetland. So at the same time, does that create a new buffer?
I don't know.
Mike?
That's a good question.
So basically, you have a new wetland established, okay? Everybody agreed to it, so you've got the buffer zone, okay? You have the 100 and your 50, the local,
Yep.
all right? But then you have to look at it, because I haven't been out there since the fall, but you've got to look at what's disturbed out there, and, all those types of things, to when an applicant comes to you, you're gonna have to evaluate it basically
Sure.
on its own.
And Jen, for the record, that Mike Cluck was a former member here, and, okay. That was one of the pieces that left me puzzled with that one, is how that would actually come into play. It was an active yard when it was constructed. They've been working out there since it was constructed, and
It's like anytime the resource area line changes, the buffers go with it. Okay, so that's, and when you go to do work, someone goes to do work, say in 2021, they delineate the wetlands then, and the buffers delineated. I don't remember it being anything in any of the orders that changed that.
Okay.
And MBTA did not play with local bylaw, if you remember.
I wasn't serving on the commission at the time that went on, so and like I said, I tried to look back just to see if there was any particular notes. So, sometimes in some of those orders, there's something specific or could change, but I just can't remember or never found anything to that.
Right.
Okay.
When it comes in, so say unless they keep the use exactly the same,
Mhm.
that's one thing, but if it comes in as a new project.
I understand that.
It'll come in as a redevelopment.
Right.
And then we've got redevelopment standards that they need to meet.
Yep. No, I get all that. I just wonder if there's any sort of grandfathering, or if there was any
Yeah.
exclusion or any special conditions placed on the property at the time that marsh was constructed. So, but it's thick. I mean, the paperwork for that is pretty voluminous. Okay, well, good.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks a lot.
Oh,
There's a gentleman.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
I just had a question, that's a technical.
And just your name and address, please.
My name is Max Formal, 141 Judge Cushing Road.
Okay.
I thought the state's requirement versus what the town can do is going right down to the wetlands and not the first 50-foot buffer, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, the state will look at it right up to the wetlands, as we will.
Okay, all right.
All I'm
so-
saying is, in most cases, the town of Scituate has a bylaw that says that we have a no-build bylaw 50 feet from a wetland. So if there was a pond out back there and nothing had been happening, and someone came in and said, we want to build some homes back here, we'd say, well, the first 50 feet is a no-touch, and then in the 50 to 100, we have some jurisdiction, and we can talk about what happens there. But this was this was a flip. This was where the wetlands was actually constructed. And if a detention pond or something like that's built today, it's technically not considered a wetland, so there's no buffer to that. But this was a marsh that was created, so I'm.
I don't want to waste your time.
No, but that's how that sort of works, and the state has been involved. The state only has a 25-foot buffer to the wetland, but the town of Scituate has a 50. So sometimes when you see, sometimes when you see a project that gets approved by the state, like a 40B, they can actually build within 25 feet of a wetland, where the town has jurisdiction, it's 50 feet. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We are gonna have an executive session, but we're gonna hold that at the end of the meeting so we can move through all the other things here. So 59 Glades Road, this is a continuation.
Thank you. For the record, Jeff Bassett, I'm with Morse Engineering, and I'm here with the property owner, Ed Walsh. And this is a NOI, a continued NOI filing to raise and rebuild the home at 59 Glades Road. On the page, Glades Road is at the bottom of the page. The property is on the opposite side of Glades Road from the Atlantic Ocean, and it's currently developed with a single-family home. So I've outlined the existing home in orange on the sheet. It also has a garage to the rear, and there's a gravel driveway running along the right-of-way along the right side property line. And the entire property is developed. There's only one really brush area back in this corner. Otherwise, it's lawn or developed with driveway or roof area. The wetlands were delineated by Brad Holmes. So the property is in land subject to coastal storm flowage, elevation AE, elevation 15. And at the rear of the property, just off of the property, is a vegetated wetland. At the request of the commission, we had the wetlands reviewed by Bob Gray. There were 3 items to discuss. There was there was a discrepancy between the plan and when you're scaling it and when you pull tape off of the corner of the garage by about 2 feet. So we agreed to just re-survey, locate all of the wetland flags and give you an updated plan for that. They also reviewed whether or not there's a coastal bank on this property and agreed that because of the slope of the, where the floodplain falls, that you do not have a bank here, a coastal bank. And then we changed what we're calling the vegetated wetland line to a salt marsh as opposed to a bordering vegetated wetland. So the proposed work will be to demolish the home as well as the garage, construct a new single-family home, more centered on the property, a swimming pool, and a reconfigured gravel driveway going to the new garage, and a new septic system. The project should have no adverse impact on the wetlands. It should actually be an improvement, being a redevelopment. That's because we're removing the garage, which is in the 50-foot buffer. A small corner of our proposed deck is within the 50-foot buffer, but I think that's offset by the garage that we're removing. Otherwise, there's no work in the 50-foot buffer. The house is generally going back in the same location. All of the work is within lawn areas. The cesspool, which is within the wetland buffer in the rear, is being removed and replaced with a new Title V compliance system in the front yard outside of the 100-foot buffer. And the home will be brought into FEMA compliance, and there'll be an erosion barrier along the down gradient limit of work.
Okay. Penny?
No, I think our concern was that the lines were right
Yeah.
and so forth, and,
Actually, can I just say that we
Yes.
don't have the report? So they made changes based on verbal input at the site meeting. So I had a draft that I received today that the consultant encouraged us to read, so I had not read it fully and finalized it. So I'm not sure all the concerns have been addressed, so just as an FYI.
okay, well, from what I heard, it sounds as though you've met what we asked you to, and, I guess I gotta read the report.
Lisa?
I agree with Penny. It looks like our concerns were met. However, seeing the report hasn't been read,
Well, we just received it this afternoon.
Right.
In draft, right.
so we still
Yeah.
need to see that.
And get it over to the applicant
Yeah.
to address the concerns.
This was from Bob Gray at Sabatis?
Yeah, there was some other stuff about highest spring tide wasn't reflected, and it's similar to the Edward Foster, so.
Okay.
I mean, I wasn't aware of the spring tide comment, but the house is built in FEMA compliance, so it should be well above the spring tide.
Yeah, because let's face it, that marsh, it does flood.
Yeah, so the first floor is up at elevation 20. There is a garage in the basement below, but that will be equipped with flood vents and have to be unfinished area.
Okay. Jen?
Just a point of clarification. Is the, part of the septic system is maybe out of the 100 from the marsh, but it's in the 100 from the ocean, is that correct?
Well, you don't have a vegetated wetland on the ocean side that you
No.
would take a buffer from.
I'm looking at the, maybe the old one, and I'm seeing 100 separate from,
To top
This-
of coastal
yeah.
bank, the seawall.
Oh, on the opposite side?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that is the case. So it's within 100 feet of the seawall on the other side of the road.
but we do let people.
Oh, yeah, just
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
point of,
yeah, no, it's a good point, Jen.
And it is a septic repair, so they're not increasing the flow to it.
Right.
What was the material like, Jeff, when you did the perks?
It was good sand, but you had to go down about 4 feet to get to the good sand. There was a thin layer of sandy loam above that.
Amy?
Yeah, just, that we did the peer review since the last hearing, so this is continued from the last meeting where
Right.
they opened it, and we did have our peer review consultant meet on site, that was out there. I mean, it's a pretty small property, been out there. The line was corrected, but as I said, because we don't have the final report in, I can't really assure you that the plan changes that they did make immediately following the site visit last week after our submission deadline, but that it's still, I'm not sure they cover everything. So I would say that I would recommend waiting to get the peer review letter and to make sure that all the final changes that you want are in.
Is there anybody in the audience to speak to this in Blades Road? Okay, so, I mean, you know, typically we get a chance to look at the review. I would like to have gone to the site visit, but I couldn't make that. But we'll typically get that notes, have a chance to look it over. And then if there's any comment or whatever, we'd deal with that.
Okay.
Are you all approved, Board of Health and,
Yes.
okay. I think it's probably, and sometimes when we're this close, we can say we could close. But if there's things that are in that report that would constitute a change, then,
So do you think you could try to have conditions prepared for the next meeting? So, assuming that there's nothing else in the report that we need to address. That way, at least we're not losing another 2 weeks after that meeting.
right. I don't know, what's your thoughts on that? I mean,
We'll see what we can do. Yeah, we'll take a look at it.
that would be,
It's not generally what we do, but, we'll see
I mean,
what we can do.
if they've got everything, the changes that were made, and then we have a decent repeat, you know, if there's issues, obviously that's not gonna be the case, and hopefully we can get back to the engineer.
Yeah, so,
Just-
I mean, it's possible that the next meeting, if they've got everything in, we could vote to close an issue,
Mm-hmm.
which would just mean that we would issue forthwith.
Yeah,
That doesn't mean you walk the next day, but it could get you a little bit closer to that end game.
Okay, yeah,
Is it-
whatever you can do.
we'll do the best we can
Yeah.
with that. Do you wanna comment on anything, sir?
No, it's okay.
All right, well, I think,
I guess one thing, the big thing is you just need to have time to read the report. If the report is what they stated, then there's no issues, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think at this point,
Yeah.
we're pretty good. I mean, it's been a good plan
Thank
from
you.
the get-go, and we appreciate the concerns and the pushback and the garage getting removed. I think overall, you know, that property's been long in need of a lot of things. And one of the things that Jen mentioned at an earlier one, Jeff, was maybe there's some debris and stuff on the edge of the marsh.
out there.
And we might ask in the orders that sort of stuff get cleaned up as part of the work. I know you didn't put it there.
Yeah.
But if and I don't think there's a lot from what I can see. It looks like overall it's pretty good,
I
but
don't recall seeing
Yeah, I
that.
can't picture
It's
it.
like old
If we're
planters,
talking
like
wheelbarrow
something-
full.
like
Some,
hanging-
just like a clay planter or something?
No, like the hanging planter you would hang,
Yeah.
it's like they just dumped the emptiness.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's not.
minimal kind of things, but we've done that before on projects like this and just request that the edge of that get, we don't want you in there with a backhoe,
Yeah.
but just sort of clean it out.
Yeah.
Would be great. Okay.
If it's, the back area is definitely, it's somebody's neighborhood's dog go-to place.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Well, we we don't have any of that in our orders, but.
I couldn't believe it, because I've only been over a few times since
Fertilizer.
I bought it, so.
All right. Okay, and the fact that we're getting a cesspool out of something that's down with a marsh and have a compliant system,
That's
in my mind, it's all good stuff, so.
Okay, great.
We'll see what we can do. All right?
Okay, thank you.
So we'll request a 2-week continuance.
I'm gonna make a motion now. I make a motion to continue 59 Glades Road to May 20th at 6:20.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Good luck with your project.
Very quick one.
Yeah, we can send it to you as soon as we have to find it.
How about Lot 1, Judge Cushing Road? On May 6, 2019, at 6:25 PM, the Town Hall, Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700 Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Country House Realty Trust to construct a new single-family dwelling, driveway, landscaping, and septic system at dwelling located Lot 1, Judge Cushing Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Evening.
Jeff Hassett again, and this is an NOI filing for a new house at Lot 1.
Excuse me, can you speak up just a little bit?
Yep.
Thank you.
This is an NOI
Yeah,
filing.
no. Do you want to move forward a little bit?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Just a little bit so everyone can see it.
Just don't shut the computer off.
If you can't see, come on up.
Yeah, if anybody's got an interest, they want to shift over a little bit, that's.
All right, so I'm here on behalf of the property owner, Jeff O'Brien. We filed a notice of intent for a new house at a property known as Lot 1, Judge Cushing Road. The property is about 1.5 acres in size and is located at the corner of Judge Cushing Road and Route 3A, Chief Justice Cushing Highway. When you come down Judge Cushing Road, immediately on the left is a relatively large bordering vegetated wetland, and then you get into an upland area, which is where we're proposing to build the home. The wetlands were delineated by Brad Holmes, and the wetland line on this plan is shown in blue. The 50-foot no disturb buffer is in red, and the 100-foot jurisdictional area is in green. The commission, your agent requested that the applicant pay to have the wetland line reviewed on your behalf, and it was reviewed last week. It was done by Bob Gray. And I have not seen a letter on this one, but it's my understanding that he did not request any changes and that he generally agreed with the line.
And I'll just weigh in that is concurring with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the proposed work will be to construct a single-family home as well as an associated driveway off of Judge Cushing Road, utilities coming off of Judge Cushing Road as well, and a septic system. You can see that the majority of the work is outside of the 100-foot buffer, and this project has been designed in accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act as well as your local regulations, in that we have not, we're not proposing any work within the 50-foot buffer, nor are we disturbing any wetland. We also have a 12-inch mulch sock along the down gradient limit of the work so that erosion cannot migrate towards the wetland beyond that area. Thank you.
Oh, it has the building envelope. I was just wondering why.
There's a dotted line.
Yeah. The building envelope, it
What's the question?
seems kind of big.
Oh, coming off of 3A?
No,
No,
right here, sort of between the 50 and 100. It says, I don't know why that piece is written.
So the building envelope, that's 100 feet from 3A. There's actually
Oh,
a
I
100-foot setback to 3A.
Okay.
okay, that's what it is. Right. You're not taking those trees down, are you?
Where?
Between the building envelope
I
and.
don't think there's any proposed work outside of
Yeah.
this area here.
No,
Well, that's
directly
what I-
behind the house, they'll
okay.
have about a 40-foot backyard.
Yeah.
And the intent is to keep all that area
Okay, see,
vegetated,
that-
keep
that-
some privacy from 3A.
What, I
Maybe
didn't
that's a
know.
little that could have said 100-foot setback from 3A.
Yeah, because that's what got me
Got it.
thinking, wait a minute, all this trees.
Yeah, we usually
Okay.
see a 30-foot setback to a road.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
it's 100.
All right, no,
Lisa?
you're out of the box.
Nothing in the 50, you're not taking trees down.
Well, you are, but you're not.
Yeah, not a,
Yeah,
not a lot of.
not in
I
the
don't have
buffers.
questions.
I mean, yeah, there's nothing in the 50, it's not, I don't love that there's still building in the 100. It's not just like a pervious driveway, I wonder if that could have been adjusted, moved it up or something.
If you did a pervious driveway, I guess the benefit would be you'd have a little less runoff from that area, but it's flowing to a very large wetland that has a lot of capacity. I don't think it would, it's not, I don't see this as being a potential to flood out a neighbor.
How close is the nearest neighbor to this?
There are houses on the right-hand side when you come down.
Yeah.
On the
It's not
left, there really
super
aren't any
clear.
until we get to the end of the road. I have an aerial, give me a second.
There's the restaurants like going south,
Oh,
up ahead,
got it.
across Judge Cushing, there's a single family residence and driveway.
There's a couple, yeah,
Yeah, few, yeah.
but you're not that close to anybody on this side. I remember that.
I mean, I don't have a real clear aerial image that I
Yeah.
thought I brought, but you come up with 3 of the house will be right there. So
Okay,
there's nothing on really on the left-hand side until you get pretty far down the road, but you do have neighbors across the street.
uh-huh,
Got a
okay.
couple.
Can I see that, Jeff? Thank you.
Yeah, so- My nephew used to own one of those houses across the street.
It's a nice neighborhood.
Thank you.
No, he doesn't live there anymore. but he did.
In the audience? Yes, ma'am. And you want to state your name and address?
So I can speak. Andrew Tibbetts, 179 Judge Cushing Road. There are multiple other members of the neighborhood here as well.
Sure.
I'll let them speak for themselves. But my primary concern, it sounds like it was already addressed, was whether the wetland line was correct. I can see where they tagged it from the street. It looks like there's vegetation past that line. So is it correct that that has already been reviewed?
So there were two, so they have a wetland scientist, in this case, it was Brad Holmes, come out, flag that, and then the commission had a review done by a company called Servetus, and part of the reason we chose that company, there's several that we would call, but this particular person is more familiar with wetlands when it comes to marshes and things like that. So
Okay.
I feel pretty comfortable with the review from that consultant that we've got a good wetlands line.
Okay. And then I wanted to follow up on a concern that was expressed about flow of water in the area and the potential to flood out neighbors. There is already a significant water problem in the neighborhood with septic systems failing in the neighborhood and needing to be replaced. Lots of people building new French drains, new burners, trying to accommodate the flow of water in the area. I have a stream that runs through my yard in this season in the spring, goes along the left-hand side of my property and dumps into that wetlands going across the road. There is, you can see one of my neighbors shaking his head, nodding his head. There's essentially standing water in the road in front of the wetlands at this time of year. And I can't dig a hole to plant a tree in my backyard without water coming up. Rosanna Davis was in my backyard recently working on my septic system. They couldn't dig a hole because the water just kept filling in the hole as they were working on it. So I'm concerned about doing any work in the neighborhood that might add to the water problems. I'm not sure if this is the right venue for that, but it's a significant concern that we all chat about in the neighborhood already.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
And coupling on that same address.
And your name?
Jennifer Tibbetts, 179 Judge Cushing Road.
Sure.
Even as far back as like just last February, we had that gigantic storm where there was tons of tree damage and whatnot. We lost a matter of 12 trees on our property as a result of the water coming down the side of the property and all the trees caving in around them. When I came home from a trip, we had an 8 to 12-inch puddle at the bottom of our driveway. So much I had to park up the street and walk across the neighbor's driveway just to access our front door. So we've done some personal investigation just from our walking the property and surveying. A lot of the water issues seem to come from that Northern Farms development that's behind 123, amongst other issues. But there's huge water issues, and all of it drains into that wetlands. As well as in the wintertime, it creates some sort of an ice dam across the road if it's not.
Okay. It looks to me like, looking at this plan, must be an intermittent stream or something that runs up between the back of a lot of your homes and Quinn Stetson Road, but not on the other side of the road. On the other side of the road, there's a wetlands between Judge Cushing and 3A. I think, right? That's the one that we're seeing in that.
Yeah, and we don't have any runoff going to the road. We actually labeled the driveway to being a 2% slope back from the edge of the pavement on the roadway,
Yeah.
so that the water from the front yard of the driveway goes into the wetland and not into the road, creating any issues. We did do 4 test pits in right here where we're working, which is generally a small area. It's less than 15,000 square feet. And we did have 4 less than 2-minute perk rates, so I don't doubt there is some poor material in the area, but right here where we're working is sand.
Did you establish a water table, Jeff?
Yeah, groundwater is down about 3 feet.
3 feet? Yep.
Can you show me that, please? Just one more. Can you point to that?
And just when you
Sorry.
call out, you just want to say your name and address.
Oh, yeah, my name is Max Formwall, 141 Judge Cushing Road.
Thank you.
So what am I pointing out?
Where you said the water table was?
Oh, we did 4 test pits, 1, 2, 3, 4. And we observed modeling rust marks in the soil at about 3 feet down.
So that typically when they dig those holes, if it's a drier time of year, what they find when they look at the sides of the trench is some iron deposits, which would sort of indicate where the average water table would be there.
In this case, we did go down 10 feet during the dry time of year. We didn't see any actual weeping.
Okay.
Mike Clark, 103 Stockbridge Road. I used to live at 155 Judge Cushing, and just want to kind of clarify what was being said. So, is it 170, what was the number you have?
179.
179 along the property line that runs perpendicular to Judge Cushing Road. It could be classified as an intermittent stream.
Yep.
It flows in, flows across, so there is a fact there. The abutters are correct, there's an issue there with water in the springtime, as you would expect.
Right. But just correct me if I'm wrong, is that in their backyard?
No, it runs along the property line. Have you been on the road lately?
Yeah.
You know the mailboxes for the neighborhood?
Yeah.
Right there, right along that property line, the water runs perpendicular down from the back, and then to the road, sometimes across the road, other times down to the catch basins.
Does this trigger stormwater?
That was one of my questions, you kind of brushed over me, that I had.
I can answer that. We designed it to keep it under the threshold requiring stormwater permits, so the total work area is less than 15,000 square feet.
I just have a few comments too, because,
And
so,
we put that summary right here.
Jeff, this is all the reasons why they don't think they do trigger it is right there.
Yeah.
Which I'm not necessarily disagreeing with that, but I had been communicating with James, Jeff, or this afternoon when you and I chatted, we talked about changes that I requested before the meeting. And those included, the grading and the distance between the limit of work and the end of the grading. So we've had some new builds in town. One comes to mind in particular on Second Cliff that we're getting a lot of heat about. and the grading is coming down and the limit of work, the contractors are unable to maintain the limit of work appropriately. So I'm a little bit concerned about the amount of fill in that slope. And so I've requested to have that limit of work bumped out and also circle the entire site. Also asked to have a construction entrance built because we are also having complaints about mud leaving the site and junking up the roads. So talked to James about adding a construction pad, also showing the stockpile for soil. There's gonna be soil stored on site. Roof drains. We also talked about roof drains to accommodate the drainage off the proposed 4-bedroom dwelling, which is of significant size. So although it does not officially trigger the stormwater bylaw, those could be helpful, seeing how the property is within the 100-foot jurisdiction. And I do agree with Jen that if the project was reined in a bit, they could probably cut down on the amount of disturbance in the 100. So those are just some comments I had.
Excuse me.
Oh,
Max Ford,
yeah.
140. Cut down on what you tailed off at the end of your sentence.
Oh, storm drains or roof drains would maybe rein in on the effect of drainage on the property. Since they don't officially trigger Scituate stormwater bylaw with a triggering threshold.
Okay.
And so if you review the plan, which Jeff can go through the reasons why they don't officially trigger the stormwater bylaw, there still no doubt will be some impact from this development. So often what they'll do is they'll put in a roof drain to accommodate for some of that drainage. It's not a high expense action, but there's a good payoff. So those are some of the things that we're leaning towards when we redo the stormwater regs, which we've been working on in-house.
So
What do you mean now about the grading? It was pretty steep there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about that one particular property on Second Cliff where we've had a lot of trouble, complaints.
So the grading on the side here,
Yeah.
it's a 4-to-1 slope.
It's a
So
4-to-1.
4-to-1, so from the end of this table to here, it's going up that much. So it's relatively flat. I do think that if we, at the limit of work here, you're gonna have a 12-inch diameter mulch sock, clearly defining that line. And I do think you could taper the fill off at that slope and not go beyond that line. I guess I'd leave it up to you, we could push the tree line out 5 or 6 feet and still be not working the 50-foot buffer, but I do think that slope can be constructed that way and not have to creep into that buffer area. I would suggest stockpiles to be required to be outside of the 100-foot buffer, probably in the backyard. No issue with construction entrance, that's pretty standard practice. I would ask if that could be conditioned. I'm okay with roof drains. I would ask if that could be conditioned also. And the limit of work actually is shown. It's the bold line here, being the mulch sock, the 12-inch diameter. And then it continues as more of a fine line that you probably can't see from there. But it's labeled as a proposed silt fence going around the rest of the project.
Yeah.
So there's gonna be a permanent barrier that usually gets put in before there's any construction, so the contractor knows that's the line, don't go beyond that point.
Well, like a permanent temporary barrier, it's not a
Permanent,
permanent, well,
during construction.
yeah.
Construction. Yeah.
Okay, so the things that Amy's requesting, although they don't necessarily come into play because of the, we're not triggering the stormwater, but being in the 100-foot buffer, those could be considered mitigation for working in that area.
Mhm.
So you're right, they could be part of the conditions. I'm just trying to think if there's any other pieces. I remember when those subdivisions were built, and there's pockets of sand, there's some bad material. I mean, at one time, there was actually a small sand pit way in back there, 50, 70 years ago. There was good enough material for somebody to dig out a bunch of it. but it does run hot and cold with the wetlands in that area as well.
Yeah, we did soil plugs when I walked this entire line with the wetland scientists in the rain the other day, and the ticks. It was cold, it was fun, but anyways, we did soil plugs, and it was pretty silty material.
Yeah.
So,
But I think if you look at the soil logs, there's actually a fair amount of sand, but it's down a little bit.
Yeah.
I guess the only other the request about being in the 100 with a paved driveway. I understand what you're saying, everything's running off, but it's running off to something that's a fairly steep slope. Granted, it's running into the buffer area, which isn't gonna impact.
Was this in the Water Protection Resource District?
It is, yes.
Yeah, so those also have requirements, but I believe I looked at that as well, and I think that they meet, because of the size of the lot, they're meeting the threshold for percentage impervious there too, so.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Yes, Max.
Yep.
Formal.
That's okay. Jen's got it now.
And I don't want to give my address away, in case anybody gets mad. Can I ask the engineer, on the chart where you have the elevations, the gradations, that 5-foot drop, where you said it was a 4-to-1, right up next to where the garage is, okay?
The slope here?
Yeah, okay, so at the top of that, at the plateau, will that be filled in, or will that be dredged? Or what will be the difference in the elevation of the land right now versus the elevation of the slab that's going to be part of that?
Yeah. So currently, the elevation in the road is.
Jeff, you're gonna have to either
Sorry.
turn or speak up.
Sorry.
Can I?
Yep.
Yeah.
So currently, the elevation in the road is elevation 20.6, and then back when you get to the face of the garage is, that would be at elevation 17.
17.
And we're gonna fill that, so it's now coming up to 22. So between the garage and the road, there, and the front of the house in general, but that area is coming up 5 feet.
It'll be up 5 feet.
Yeah.
Can I ask
Basically, making it level with the road, slightly higher.
whether the runoff or the lack of runoff would have any significant effect on the wetlands defined north of the blue line, right there?
You're gonna have a slight increase in runoff, where you convert woods to lawn areas. But nothing real significant, not enough that you're gonna create flooding for any abutters.
Can you quantify that at all?
I don't have quantities now.
Okay. Another thing relative to, may I,
Sure.
Max Formal?
Yep. All it is for Jen so that she can put in the minutes who was speaking.
Judge Cushing Highway, if you go back to the zoning board, planning board, I think it's the zoning board, back in around 1988, 89, was talking about building one Form A after another along that area. And that Judge Cushing Road is considered an ancient way by the town. It's historic, and it's, from what I was told, now I don't have proof because I thought the issue was over, that it's maybe one of the only original pieces of road between Boston and Plymouth. Now, that's what I've been told when we bought our house 25 years ago, that this was a special road that was, it's not under normal specs for a road to be built in Scituate.
So just not to cut you off, but our hearing is a conservation hearing.
Yes,
So we deal with the Wetlands Protection Act,
okay.
and in this case, maybe stormwater if it were triggered with that. But in terms of any other requirement, like setback or
Okay, thank you.
whatever. It'd be a question for either the zoning board or the planning board, but, as much as we'd like to,
But relative to conservation and everything of the whole land, I know wetlands versus everything, that's an ancient way. I'm concerned about the impact of another driveway coming through there, whether that will change anything.
okay. I've never, to be quite honest with you, I don't think I could look through all the Wetlands Protection Act stuff, and there'd be nothing in there about an ancient way. So, again,
So it's not-
we don't have the jurisdiction over that piece of it, and I,
Thank you.
you know, maybe the Historical Society, somebody else, but we just, that's nothing that we, can weigh in on,
Okay.
all right?
So, and to summarize what the gentleman said from the engineering company, there'll be a change, but undefined change in the amount of runoff going into the wetlands.
There will. When you add impervious surfaces, well, when you add impervious surfaces, you're gonna have some additional runoff, plus they're filling an area, and they're gonna have a slope that runs towards that. But they're running into an area that's substantial. It's very complicated. Sometimes in dealing with stormwater is sort of the piece that comes in. First, there's the wetlands issues and staying outside of the buffer zone or things like that, and the impact that it would have on that. And then there's a piece about stormwater and runoff, and how that impacts neighbors around you. And if this were in an area that was denser, then that stormwater might be triggered by this project. But because of the area that this house sits on, this proposed house sits on, and where that water goes to, they can design it so that it doesn't trigger a stormwater issue. What Amy asked for, and what we're saying is, because they're in the 100-foot buffer, can they do some additional measures to offset some of that, the adding of the impervious area? So we're saying we'd like to see drainage, so when the water comes off the roof and goes into the gutters, that it goes into some sort of dry well kind of thing. So that water's still gonna fall on that property, whether there was a roof there or a tree there, but we know that the trees would absorb more of that water. So in lieu of that, what we're asking is that they create like a dry well or some sort of thing so that that water is drawn into the earth to sort of mimic what would have happened if it was left natural.
And may I ask one more question?
Sure.
And I don't know if this is conservation enough. How much clearing of the land?
So we have that, maybe Jeff can,
15,000 square feet.
or 14,999 or something.
Yes.
And there is about a 15-foot, 20-foot section between that and the actual road. There's an area, I think you have delineated on the chart here, where you have your heavy line there, and then you have the road.
Max, if you want to get up and point it out, that's
I'm
fine.
sorry. Excuse me.
Yep.
So right here and here, is this the road, or is this the other side of the road?
You're looking at both sides of the
Okay,
road.
okay,
There
I
and
didn't,
there.
I'm sorry. Yes. Thank you.
Good?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Jennifer Tibbetts, 179 Judge Cushing Road.
Yep.
So two things, I'm not leaving super comfortable, knowing how he mentioned that it is gonna be leveled up 5 feet to the where the road is, and there is gonna be some flow back into the road. Our driveway is much lower than that entering space, so I'm not leaving feeling confident that the end of our driveway is going to have an increased impact from stormwater runoff, where the end of our driveway already floods. Any more than that, we're
So there will be no runoff from this property onto the road. And we're labeling to, yes, we are bringing in fill in the front yard, but we're labeling it to slope back from the road and then come up.
Did you get that?
No, I don't.
Why don't you, so what is, if you look at the contour, Jeff, maybe you
Yeah.
can point that out a little bit.
So at the back edge of the road, the site is proposed to grade away from the road and then come up, so that the water coming from the front yard will flow forward towards the road, but not make it to the road, and then get diverted into the wetland.
Okay. And then one piggyback question.
Sure.
If we do start to see an increase in runoff, who do we go to?
You'd obviously call the town hall. We'd be talking with who's ever building it to see where they are with that piece. But, you know, we tried ahead of time to make sure that those things are addressed.
What about 5 years down the road? Because that is a growing wetlands as a result of that creek, that seasonal creek that goes down the side of our property.
Mm-hmm.
So after,
Over the past 4 years that we've already been, we've already seen it grow about probably twice in size.
yeah, after the work is totally complete and all the areas are stabilized, we have to do an as-built survey and then submit that to the commission and for their certification that it was built correctly.
And then what's the result if it's not?
We don't get a certificate of compliance, and then you have to close that out. It runs with the deed, so until you close it out, you really can't sell the property.
Okay? Anybody else?
Yeah, Frank, I'm not really comfortable having you close without seeing these changes on the plan. And I'm also gonna recommend that there be a field test to verify that the roof drains will actually work. So if they're designing this project just under the threshold of the stormwater bylaw by, I don't know, like you're saying 14,999 triggers at 15,000, that's not a very big margin of difference there. If the groundwater is so shallow and we have all these complaints about groundwater, and the site is very tightly developed, like where are these roof drains gonna go where they're gonna actually function? Because it's no good to put it in if it's gonna be flooded with water, you know what I mean? So we wanna actually have a solution that works, which I think that they could easily verify with some test pits.
Well, we already have test pits on the site, right?
Yeah, in the location where the drain would go, where the drains are proposed.
Well,
So maybe they just need to take it back and show us where they propose that they go, and if they correspond with data they already have, then that would be fine. But it's pretty tight.
okay. Yeah, so we're looking for a plan, was to show that drainage, those pieces, the pits. What else, Amy?
Well, there's one, actually, there is a test pit right off the driveway, so maybe
Right.
that's, but I mean, I'm not gonna engineer the site, that's for them to do, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a small area. We've done 4 test pits, which are all consistent with groundwater down just about 3 feet. So I prefer not to do more test pits. I don't mind showing the dry wells and designing them to be 2 feet above the water table, which is the standard practice. I'll leave it up to you if you think we need another test pit directly where the dry wells are going.
I think you've got a pretty good,
Keep that full.
uh,
Okay.
but I think Amy's right that we need to see where these are gonna get located, whether they're under the driveway or whatever.
Okay.
Right?
So as far as the driveway, and whether considering making it a pervious driveway, would you be more comfortable if we kept it as impervious, but we could put a stone trench along the downhill side to capture and hold back some of the runoff?
Personally, I think that that's a better alternative. We know that, like, pervious pavement only works for so long, and then, once it clogs, it's failed. You know, you tell someone to put in a gravel driveway, but if it's really hard packed, it's almost as impervious as a asphalt driveway.
It is.
So I'd much rather see something at the end of the driveway to collect that water and pick some of that up to slow it down from running down the slope. So I think that in combination with the collectors, in my mind, would be about the best you could put on that site.
Okay, can do that.
I can't think of anything.
No, it's me neither.
How quickly can you turn that around?
We can get it in for the deadline for the next meeting. It's just some drafting things, it shouldn't take too long.
Okay.
So, you want to make a motion?
Make a motion to
I make a
continue.
motion to
Okay.
continue Lot 1, Judge Cushing Road to 6/20 on May 20th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Thank you.
Jeff, I think this was,
That was his.
it would be good if we can get a copy of that.
I'll email it.
Thank you. Number 20 Marshfield, septic. Here's, on May 6, 2019, at 6:30 PM, the Town Hall Situate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40, Massachusetts General Laws, and Section 30700, Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Thomas and Karen Nicholson to repair a septic system and replace piers for added support on addition of dwelling located at 20 Marshfield Ave, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend.
All right, thank you. Again, for the record, Jeff Bassett. And as you mentioned, this is an NOI filing for septic repair, in addition, and new piers for supports. The property is 20 Marshfield Ave in Humrock. There are no vegetated wetlands on the property or within 100 feet. Being in Humrock, it is a barrier beach, and it's also in land subject to coastal storm flowage. The proposed work will be to construct an addition. The addition is located right here. I've colored it in brown. And the existing home and the existing covered porch are in orange. So it's only a small extension of the actual roof area. In addition to, that addition will be supported by helical piles, so very limited ground disturbance. And then they're also proposing to install 8 other new helical piles for additional supports on the house. The septic is currently in the rear yard. It's a cesspool, and we're proposing to replace that with a new Title V septic system.
Excuse me, can you just keep it, if you have a conversation, take it out in the hall? Thank you.
And I think that's it. If you have any questions.
I don't, it looks pretty straightforward, but
Lisa?
the other side.
Jen?
Nothing.
Amy?
No, I mean, I think it will be an improvement, meets the requirements of the act. Does it have board health approval, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't think it does. So, I hate to keep it alive, but,
Have like a,
Why don't we close it contingent on finding out Board of Health approval?
do you know where you are in the process? Are you guys in
There's no
the home
one
stretch,
else.
maybe?
I don't. I can tell you it's a very simple system. It's about as simple as they get. It's good, perfect sand, and there's really nowhere else you can put it.
No.
It's going back to the same location,
No.
so I don't see any
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah, I think,
So pending board of health approval,
Sure.
yeah.
butters.
Nobody out there?
Anybody else for this one?
Okay, I make a motion to close, pending Board of Health approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good.
Thank you, sir.
83 Gilson Road, bank stabilization. On May 6, 2019, at 6:35 PM, the Town Hall Situate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40, Massachusetts General Laws, and Section 30700, Town of Situate Code of Bylaws, regarding the application of David and Jean Lyons to bank stabilization and invasive species control of a dwelling located at 83 Gilson Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend.
Mr. Snow, how are you?
Good evening, Mr. Clark.
For the record, I'm Michael Clark, Design Consultants. I'm here with David and Jean Lyons, the applicant and the property owner, and Michaela Heffernan, who is on my staff.
Our sympathies.
Great. I know I'm in trouble now. So what we have here is I believe you're all familiar with the house. It was just remodeled and redone. But what we have is two areas on the top of the slope that have had slope failures. And there are two different types of slope failures. On this area here, the darker gray, it's a veneer failure, so it kind of slipped down like this. And so it left a pretty good escarpment that's now all bare soil. In this area, you can see it from the contours, it's more of a circular failure. So two different types of failures, two different responses. This is located on the, I'm gonna use the term bluff, because I don't wanna get confused with Coastal Bank on this. So it's located on top of the hill, on the bluff. Interesting site. A lot of times we see in Scituate that the top of Third Cliff is the Coastal Bank, okay? So looking at the definitions, we put in some transects, and what we found out is there's some erosion down in this area, in flatter area. The Coastal Bank, actually for most of the property, is down near the toe of the slope. And just so you can see, I kind of highlighted it. So, let's see. So it's basically, it's the first break where the slope is less than 4 to 1 above the floodplain.
Thank you.
Okay? But it's still in the buffer zone. Okay, so it's still under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. Okay. To add some further complications here, this whole entire slope is invaded with Japanese knotweed. Okay. Japanese knotweed, besides the issues that we typically have with it being an invasive species, it's relatively shallow rooted. Okay, and it only really provides some reinforcement against erosion. Okay. So that's one of the other things we had to consider. So the other resource area on the site is land subject to coastal storm flowage, velocity at elevation 19. And if you look, when you look at the plans, it's real close. You can see where it is. The reason this site has that flat area is because the seawall that runs along Third Cliff has basically stopped a lot of the erosion, so as the slope fails, the soils pile up at the bottom of the slope and bring it up higher, and it's not really getting into the system as sediment. But what the storm we had 2 years ago, what we found along the bank on Third Cliff is you had a lot of water going over the top and then running laterally along the cliff to the low spot. So that's where the erosion is, at the toe of the slope, okay? Because we have 20 feet or so, at this point, we're not looking to address the toe of the slope erosion, okay? So stabilization area 1 is a circular failure, okay? We're gonna do what we're proposing to do is some bioengineering on the site, okay? So the first thing that we have to do is remove along the whole top of the slope for probably a width about 5 to 10 feet is remove the knotweed in the soil, the topsoil. We have to get that all out of there. It has to be disposed of at a proper location because the knotweed will reinvade wherever that material goes. Okay, and then what we're planning to do is we're going to get in and clean up the slope a little bit, get rid of the soft materials, but scarify it. And let's tip this one a little over. Okay. So this is stabilization area 1. So stabilization area 1 actually has a relatively flat spot. So what we're proposing to do is build it up with soil in 1-foot lifts. Okay. And as we build up the soil, we'll be placing, we'll be live staking the slope. Right now, it's the plants you use for live staking are not the most salt tolerant plants. We did another project recently, and we found that on the top, maybe 2/3 of the, maybe 10 feet above the floodplain, Red Osier Dogwood is taking, okay? And then we're also looking at another site. We'll be over to the commission in probably another month or so. They have pussy willow on the site, which leads me to believe that pussy willow will also survive on the site. So we're gonna intermix red twig dogwood stakes with pussy willow stakes and drive, as we compact it, we'll lay the stakes down so that they'll take and start to grow. Once we get the fill in and all the way up to the top, we're gonna put some topsoil over the surface. And then we're gonna seed it with a coastal salt tolerant mix. And what's really nice about this is this mix is full of a lot of native grasses that are very salt tolerant. Not dune grass, but switch grass and blue stem, Indian grass. Some of these plants their roots grow 8 to 10 feet. So the hope in this, and then it'll be covered with a jute mat, okay, to provide protection against erosion from rainfall and also provide a little bit better environment for the germination, okay? So that's that location. The other location it's much steeper, okay? So instead of building it up in layers, we're gonna use core logs, and they'll perform the outside perimeter, and as we place a core log, we'll backfill behind them. One of the issues is typically we'd like to use oak stakes. We're proposing to use some rebar here because of the density and the steepness of the slope, and I don't want those core logs to, I really don't want them to fall in. I think it'd be much less invasive. There's another technique where they drive duckbills with cables in, but it's a lot more work, and these slopes are steep, so there'd be more disturbance. And so the same thing here, as we build this up, we'll put a core log in, backfill behind it, do some live staking, continue to do that all the way up, as you can see in this area here. And then also, we're gonna then spread a layer of topsoil to fit the nooks and crannies on the core logs. Seed this area with grass seed, and then put a jute mat over it like we talked about in the other ways. So we're hoping in these two locations that the roots the roots from the grasses and the live stakes will really provide a good reinforcement and really help against erosion. And then the third thing we'd like to do is we actually like to propose a perpetual condition to attack the knotweed on site. Depending on the initial cost, the Lions recognize that knotweed is an issue. They'd like to handle it, within their family budget, and basically it's going to be through a mixture of cutting and maybe some herbicide treatments. With the slope being as steep as it is, it's about 1 to 1, and we're not proposing to use plastic to smother the weed. We're afraid of generating a lot more runoff in that water, causing erosion problems down below. So that's the basically the other two minor things. So when they do the invasive species control of the knotweed, they'll submit a yearly report to the commission, stating what they've done, so that the commission knows what's going on. And there'll also be some supplemental plantings with Rose virginiana. We found that it does fairly well on the slopes, and we would like to go there. This This project is basically to improve the stability of this project and reinforce the slopes. And basically, in the notice of intent is a summary of the performance standards, but it comes into, we're proposing no adverse effect on the stability of the bank. Okay, so that's the project in a nutshell.
Big nutshell.
Big nutshell.
Penny?
Well, I'm just wondering, the difference between this and the one down around the corner.
Say again?
The difference between the two banks, yours and then around the corner, one driftway, keep going down the cliff.
I have no idea.
Yeah, well, I'm asking, I think Amy, the difference between the two.
The two banks?
Yeah, and what they're doing.
Well, I mean, they're similar in that they're both proposing to revegetate and stabilize, but their methods are a little bit different. I don't know, I was gonna call out and ask for more information on the details on the core logs and like what materials and stuff like that.
So core
Like, we
logs-
can just kind of go through it and then also
Yeah.
get into why, like, why did the bank fail? And when did it fail? Like, those types of things.
So I can't tell you when the bank failed, but these,
Because this house, I'm thinking that this has an open order, because now I recognize these folks, right? Because I think it's a newish house with an
they had
open
an
order.
RDA, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Well, we came before you before, and what was it called? It was a negative effect.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, so
yeah.
it's just for a patio.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, summer started, yeah, okay.
So it's a little bit complicated, so that, these slopes failed in two ways. One is in a veneer, it kind of slides down like a layer of cake,
Yeah,
okay? I think what happened with, area two is, we've had a progressive failure up the slope over a couple decades, okay? So that's why the knotweed keeps coming in, because it's invasive. And if you look at the flat area at the bottom of the slope, that's where all the soil has ended up. It's basically built up a plateau there. And then the other site appears to be more of a slip failure. So maybe there was, what happens is that these slopes, especially this one, is very close to 1-to-1. So it has an angle of repose of 45 degrees. The stability of the slope then, with a factor of safety, is very close to 1. So these slopes are just on the side of being safe along a lot of the bank. Okay, it's third cliff is a drumlin. It's glacial soil. It's very compact, very hard. 45-degree angle of repose is not all that usual. Okay, we're usually talking about soils around 30 degrees or so. So what can happen is if we have a little bit of erosion, maybe a big rainstorm, so when it rains, the surface soils get heavier because they absorb the water. So that affects that balance. And then also in these slopes, we found that there's some sand seams in them, okay? And those seams, when you have a period of rainfall, I'm surprised we haven't heard reports of any failures over the last month or
There's
so.
been a few.
Yeah, so, with the seeps, all of a sudden you get flowing water in those sand seams. That's like, all of a sudden it becomes like a Teflon layer, and it moves. So what we're really trying to do is stabilize the existing eroded slopes, okay? So that they don't have a further erosion back onto the property, all right? The big concern is that if these areas don't go, what you'll end up with is, it'll want to go 1-to-1 to here, and all of a sudden the top of the cliff will be 5 or 10 feet in, okay?
Not what Dave and Jean wanted to hear.
What's that?
none of my lifetime.
And they've done everything right, so when they graded the property, they
Perfect.
graded the house away from the cliff to bring the
Yep.
runoff away, so there's not those issues.
Yep.
All right, and the core logs are made with core, it's from coconut. It's shredded coconut, and it's one of the materials that are used. If you look at, CZM has the Smart Storm information, it's one of the things they recommend.
Rebecca would love this.
Yeah, no, I know. Well, and so to get back to Penny's question, while they're near each other,
Yeah.
they're totally different sites, as far as I can
Oh, I
tell.
understand that, but I just don't know what's the best
Yeah.
practice.
Well, I know, so
Yeah.
what we did, Mike, there was a property at One Driftway, just recently came in front of us, it was a raise rebuild.
I'll have to go look at it.
And they also are proposing to stabilize a bank there. And it's right next to, you Scituate people know, that their neighbors have a
So if you're gonna,
Griffin.
the end of
is next to
Driftway.
Yeah, so
Griffin's.
it's next to Griffin's,
Right.
I've seen that
Yeah.
location.
so
Yeah.
you may wanna take a look at the plant materials. And
What they do.
Which
What
is
we-
next to Conway, and I know you worked at Conway
Yeah.
the winter of.
And that's a totally different situation.
Right, so that's what I'm saying, it's
Yeah.
different.
And so if you look at Griffin's, okay, they've used too much filter fabric up there, so the topsoil's slipping.
Yeah, they've actually held, I want the other members to weigh in as well, but the plant material that's out there seemed to be,
Yeah,
Holding well.
yeah,
Working
and
out.
that's one of the reasons we're going with.
but I know it's sort of, you gotta figure out what'll work
Yeah,
in this.
and,
It was available.
Yeah.
Okay, so, it's just, with the bioengineering live staking, it's typically willows and dogwoods, okay? They're not, neither one of them are very salt tolerant, all right? The only reason we're putting pussy willow out there is because we've seen it, we'll be coming in with another house a little bit down, which is another totally different situation. It's really interesting. But they have pussy willow growing on site, okay? So if pussy willow's growing there, it could grow, and that's why we picked it. These sites are very, there's a dramatic difference from the ecological plants, how they can grow as you go up the slope. There's more salt on the bottom, less on the top. As you go up the slope, it's drier, okay? A lot of these sites also have phragmites at the bottom. Okay? They have phragmites because there's water leaching out of the toe slopes. It makes these problems even worse. So that's why we took this approach. It was pretty well thought out. It's gone on a little while. And it's really about, right now they have 5 or 6 feet. It's vertical like this along both those different types of cuts. And we really want to get something in there to hopefully reinforce it. So.
Can I just, Lisa, any questions or comments?
No,
Can jump to Jen for a second if you think of something.
No, as an aside, I actually found the report one of the easier ones to read. It was organized really nicely.
Thank you.
So sometimes they're just like a mess of text, and I appreciate how it laid out.
Well, imagine if I came in here and it was a mess.
You know what I mean? Not a mess of text, just
Yeah.
like a long run. It was easier.
No, it was old school. It was like the way it should be. Like your NOI was good. It was thorough.
Thank
It
you.
was like, it described the geology
Yeah.
and it got into it.
He ripped enough of them apart over the years, so he should know.
Yeah. No, I used to write environmental site assessments. It reminded me of the days of walking people through the property description. So, I mean, the project is complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a wetland scientist, I don't know, I think that the intent, I agree, is to meet the performance standards, but whether or not what he's proposing is consistent with what the regulators really wanna see these days, I'm not sure. But, I don't know, it's not, it doesn't appear on the outside to be as big of a project as that one on the Driftway did, where they took it from the top of the coastal bank all the way down to the revetment, and
Yeah.
then they filled on in the backside of the revetments, like where the splash over is,
Yeah.
they filled that up and then came up. But so you're not proposing to even go down that
No,
far at all?
we're really proposing to stabilize this one area up higher, okay? And then in talking to Mr. and Mrs. Lyons, we got that erosion to the toe of the slope, but it's, like I said, it's 10 or 15 feet away from the toe, and it's behind the seawall, and it's in a pretty good location. So what they want to do is, address that when they need to, not beforehand. Okay. But the plan is, we recognize that the Japanese knotweed there is an issue. We'd like to, take it in smaller sections. And one of the reasons you want to do it in smaller sections too is if, you have a bad year with plants and everything, you don't have a big exposed area, you get a small
I think that's wise.
exposed area. That whole cliff is full of invasive species. It's got knotweed, it's got Phragmites, there's places in there with bittersweet that you can't get through. So, again, we're trying to address this one location.
Sure.
We use bioengineering techniques. To me, it's not quite what the Smart Storm stuff and the guidance you get from CZM, because we're not down to the bottom of the slope, but it is using some of the other techniques about revegetation and stabilization.
Anybody in the audience speak to this? So, Mike, we just had the opportunity to look at the site with CZM at the end of Driftway.
Yep.
The applicant originally was proposing gabion baskets more in the lower area. CZM was negative about that. They were happy with coil logs and having organic material as opposed to that, although we thought that maybe the gabion baskets would be more beneficial down where they're getting wave action and stuff like that. But I'm not a coastal geologist either. But, to your point, I had a customer that we helped years ago, and we had GZA in to do borings and this glacial till and perched water and all that sort of stuff that makes stabilizing that bank incredibly difficult, not to mention the pitch. And the Lions' site, to your point, everything pitches back towards their house and then towards Gilson. So it's not like they have water going over the cliff that's eroding the cliff. That's not happening there. And you can clearly see where places have fallen. So to get those kind of stabilized, I think you're trying an approach. And you're using organic material basically with the exception of the rebar, which I don't see any other way to really pin that to the cliff. Oak stakes are just gonna shatter. So I think trying to do that and then get in vegetation in there to bond with that and not taking out all the knotweed at once. I mean, it's not great to be there, but the last thing you wanna do is strip that whole cliff.
Right.
Especially with that being that steep. You take 10 by 10 patches later on or 3 foot wide strips along the whole cliff and work your way down. Gene can hold the rope while Dave's down there. So, yeah. But I think a progressive way to try to revegetate. I mean, you've got neighbors on either side with other issues that are not good either. And then luckily you do have that piece on the bottom, so at least you don't have the wave action all the time right there.
And again, that bottom is up pretty high.
Yeah.
It's like the beach there is, well, it's not even a beach because it's not on, it's,
Right.
you got the coastal bank in
Yep.
front of it. But that area is up around elevation 15 or so.
Yeah.
In other locations, it's down 8 or 9, so
Right.
it's,
But I think kind of fooling around with some different plant material as you go and see what grows and then work your way through it.
yeah, and so that's one of the things. So we used, at Eagles Nest, we used red twig dogwood, and it's starting to come in pretty good this year. So that's one of the reasons. I did a fair amount of research with the live staking on the bluffs,
Yep.
and the suppliers are basically telling you, you're not going to have a lot of luck. But, you know, with the red twig doing pretty well in the upper half, and then when Michaela went out there, she's an environmental scientist, and she identified pussy willow on one of the neighbors will be coming in the future. Those two species really live stake well, and they grow, their roots grow, and so we are trying to look at what is working there. So
I'd just encourage you also take a look at the end of Driftway and look at the plants that are growing out there, because they seem to be doing fairly well. Might be some good, but that was Stan doing a project out there
I'll give them a call. That's
and
all.
showing,
Yeah.
and but he also, like I say, he was showing gabions at the base, and cesium nixed that. They don't want to see any real hard stuff. They want to see it all with vegetation. I'm not sure I buy that either, but I think it seems fairly consistent with what they were asking us.
Well, yeah, but I don't know about the steel stakes, though. For
There's
some
no other way to
reason,
hold it.
I thought that was they were leaning against that, and there was some proprietary.
So there's a proprietary system. It's a duckbill you drive into the ground, and then it's got a piece of wire cable you use to tie it. So it's still steel into the ground. The reason we went with the rebar, it's very durable.
The same person also told us to hold a house up with a crane while they rebuilt underneath it, so.
You know, so there's been a fair lot of thought going into this one.
Yep,
So
we don't need to,
All right, do we close
I'd
or
like to
what?
get a motion.
Can I close it?
Yeah,
I make a motion to close.
all in favor?
Aye. Well, good
Awesome.
luck out there, sir.
thank you very much.
Yeah, good
Appreciate
luck with
it.
your project.
Can we expect that perpetual condition?
Yes.
All right, thank you, Frank. Thank you. Thank you. Amy, nice meeting you finally.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
Talked on the phone a couple times.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
124 Man Hill Road. What's that? No, we got a couple more to go, sorry. I wish we were all done.
We've got a good hour or so.
Yep, no, that's okay. On May 6, 2019, 6:40 PM, the Town Hall, Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40, Massachusetts General Laws, and Section 30700, Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Stephen and Sarah Turner to construct a new deck and pool at dwelling located at 124 Man Hill Road. Scituate abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
Hey, good evening. For the record, Jeff Hassett. So this is an NOI filing for a deck at 124 Man Hill Road. This house was recently constructed. There was an order of conditions for it, which was closed out within the last year. And then there was also, there's a new owner within the last several months.
The pool in the year.
The house currently has a deck on the ocean side of it, and the owners would like to extend the deck and actually have a small elevated swimming pool on that deck. The pool is only 7.5 feet by 20 feet. And so the wetland line is shown in blue and the 50-foot buffer in red. So you can see all the work is outside of the 50-foot buffer, and the work is all within existing lawn areas. And the land disturbance will be to install the sonotubes holding up the deck.
The pool's not in the ground?
No.
No, it's
No,
almost
it's
treated
not.
like a hot tub.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. This site, when it was built, is very, very tight. And they've come up with a very unique
Yeah.
idea of how to get a pool on that piece of property. And I personally, I don't, from after I read through and looked at it at first, because I know it was pretty contentious at different points how we were gonna even get a house there. So, I don't have a problem.
Lisa?
No?
Jen?
No, I don't think so.
Amy?
The pool in
Well, I
the-
had a couple of notes for the plan. I'd like it to be noted when the wetland was flagged. I'm sure it was within a couple years ago. I mean, I just want to make sure that it's recent, the wetland line's based on recent.
They're not, well, go ahead.
Well, just to, a notation on the
Let's do
plan.
one person
Just
at a
want to
time.
note it on
I
the plan,
said
so I just
vertical,
wanted
Ed.
to note the date on the plan and who did it,
Yeah,
for information purposes, and then, so, because the house was, it looks like it was built around 2018.
yeah.
And did it trigger the stormwater bylaw at that time, this project, Jeff?
You know, I'm not sure.
I don't believe it did. I mean, Pat and I did that when, I think, didn't Brad do that wetlands line?
He did, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really tight. And
I've
we,
been out
we,
there.
we contemplated whether we should clear brush to do that, and Pat and I waded through
Oh, I know, I've
all
been out
those
there. It's-
bramble and brush to get that, and I think,
Yeah.
I can't see how we're gonna come up with anything different, or whether it's worth it to do anything different.
No, I don't think it is, I just want it noted on the plan, so that it's accurate, because I think that the wetland line is probably still valid, based on the fact that it was only done within the last couple of years. And then we've also established the 50-foot setback in the certificate of compliance by virtue of the no disturb posts that you had put along the 50. And actually, I was looking at the orders for the house, and there were concrete bounds
They put them in.
and posts put on the 50.
Yep.
So when we issued that CFC last year.
I remember walking out
yeah,
to see
we-
that.
Yeah, we ensured that, so hopefully they're still there, but, I mean, those were really my only comments on the project.
Anybody in the audience? Take a motion to close.
I'll make a motion to close.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. 47 Gannett Road, after the fact pool and patio. On May 6, 2019, at 6:45 PM, the Townhouse Situate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700 Town of Situate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Andrea and Richard Flynn for proposed pool and associated patio, landscape fencing, lawn post at dwelling located at 47 Gannett Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend.
So the property owners at this property, 47 Gannett Road, are currently installing a pool. They've done the excavation, and then they have a building permit to install the pool, and they weren't aware that they had to go in front of conservation until it just came up. They would have liked to be here, they already had a vacation planned, so they couldn't make it. Rick from the pool company is here, if you have any questions for him. So, I mean, it's a relatively straightforward project, I feel. There are no vegetated wetlands within the vicinity. We have to file with you because we're within land subject to coastal storm flowage. And the swimming pool is 18 by 36. We do show a patio around the pool, but what they're going to build is much smaller than that patio. They decided just to do a 14-inch coping around it. So it'll be grass up to within 14 inches. And there's only some really minor site grading. It is on a little bit of a hill. The grade falls off about 1.5 feet. So there'll be a small cut on one side and a small fill on the other. So really a net no change there. And all of the areas will be re-stabilized with loam and seed. Currently they're not working, but they do have an erosion barrier around the work.
Ready?
No, I'm fine. I just wanted to find, because of the area it's in.
Lisa?
No, I don't have any questions.
Jen?
Good.
Amy, anything to add to that?
Well, so it's an after the fact notice.
Yeah.
Based on the land subject to coastal storm flowage. We did came in on a complaint, so a butter was concerned about impact from stormwater drainage and had observed water coming off the site, in a hose.
In a
into
hose?
Yeah, well, I
Well,
think
they
they were
were
just
dewatering.
dewatering
Yeah.
the pool and putting it into a storm drain.
Okay.
But so, as long as impact for storm damage prevention and flood control are addressed in the project, I would say orders are appropriate.
Anybody in the audience? So, this came about, I think, primarily because Amy was out and about, and there was a water service being replaced, like a house down the street. and they hadn't notified the commission, and in the process picked up on this. I think it's important to note that there was probably a permit issued for the swimming pool by the building department,
Yeah.
and the building department probably should have picked up that this was in this flood zone.
Well, there was an error on the plan.
Okay.
The plan didn't disclose that it was in flood zone, so.
So, combination of things, and I guess that's the real concern, is that proximity to the neighbor, that they're not gonna bear any potential water or flowing onto their property. And I think probably the changes in the patio will help that.
Right, the
Look at
patio
the
is,
grounds.
the patio's minimal.
What's the top of the pool gonna be, Jeff, the elevation of the top of the swimming pool, the coping?
12 and a half or so. Plus or minus 3 inches, I would say.
Because it just looks like, when you go by there and you see the strapping held up around there, it looks pretty high, a good amount higher, so maybe sure.
Sugar Lake pools, the top of the strapping that you're looking at,
Mhm.
that's top of my pool. I cut it down 18 inches to get the pipes in. So that's not out of grade, it's actually cut down just to get piping in. What you're looking at.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
So you've already removed 18 inches
exactly.
around the pool
So
area.
when the pipes go in, we'll backfill that with bankment, and we'll be back at the top of that. If you've looked at the site, when you come down the stairs from the house, there's a blue stone patio.
Mhm.
Top of the pool is dead on that.
Okay,
No patio, no pitch.
got it. Okay. And you have put an infiltrator?
That's actually for if they had to drain the pool, so they have somewhere to drain it.
I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it.
Anybody else there? Anybody else there?
I think I already asked somebody.
Nobody? I make a motion to close then.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Good enough.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We're gonna move on to some RDAs. Can I take a 2-minute break?
Yeah?
Yeah,
You may.
Yeah, sure.
Can you get back?
I need my stuff.
This doesn't want to be.
Don't know my debris field.
Why doesn't my chair?
You had a bum wheel?
I guess so. It doesn't want to move. Oh, well.
Yeah, Jim. Let's see the parcel.
Yeah.
Always say that about the boss, right?
Everybody was in such a huff and a puff over it last week.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm tired.
Hey, Mom.
No, I know. Yeah.
Hey, Mom, so you're not making the burrito, the tacos now, right? Sorry, it's just,
It's
I'm
gonna
still
be
here.
It's gonna be.
But, yeah, I'm just gonna take a couple more. I don't know.
Wow.
I'm not sure. I don't wanna have dinner at like 10 o'clock.
It'll be 9 before.
I know, you have to.
Yeah, I'm gonna make an
Well,
phone call.
I don't think so, he said he's on my own. Okay. Well, it's supposed to
I'm
be-
hoping not. Maybe I'm wrong.
Poor Bunker.
We'll see. We'll see.
I'm supposed to
We'll see.
finalize it and then end
We'll
it.
see.
And put it in its-
Hippity hop.
Touch your stuff.
Yeah, you did. I already ate my snack, it doesn't matter.
No, the cameras are.
You ate your snack. I
Right in
ate,
the room.
don't you eat dinner before you come?
Yeah, but
Oh.
this meeting is
Oh,
not short.
No, well, I normally eat, but I literally ran on that baseball field because I was like the fielder. So every time my grandson hit a ball, I was the one that fetched. And then I can't throw a ball to save my life. And then when I missed the person I was throwing it to, then I had to go fetch that. I ran, I went from wearing a jacket to like dying in the heat, then taking my scarf off. I'm like, I'm gonna smell like a baseball field by the time I get here.
I always eat at 5 on 99.
Have dinner like 9 o'clock.
Have my home dinner.
Well, I managed to suck down a dozen oysters.
You had oysters for dinner?
Yeah. Do you like oysters?
No,
Yeah, it just doesn't strike me as like
because this is the break.
filling.
Well, it is when you eat 3 dozen of them.
3 dozen?
Oh,
You said a dozen.
I couldn't, no.
Yeah, and they're the great white oysters. They're really briny.
Shop 36 oysters yourself on a Monday night?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, that's.
All right. Yeah.
oh.
Years ago.
Not now.
Well, I guess I would go to the ladies' room.
Hurry up,
I'll run.
hurry up.
Time, it was actually.
Oh, God.
This poor guy doing the filming tonight, he's like, come on, let's go. We thought, like, do we have to all go separately? We just can't go to.
Isn't it scary?
It's,
He's lost complete control.
it has been one of the more unruly meetings.
It really has.
I was kind of hoping by now.
It's about time.
I'm tired.
Cheering comments.
Yes, and you come home.
So you're on that
We're getting very close. I met with Paul Scott, and we went through all the numbers and everything. So hopefully we'll have the rest of that stuff back.
What about the RDA?
Yeah, we gotta get that done.
Just come over and we'll finish it.
All right,
Like it'll take us 5 minutes.
I know.
I made a very good dessert yesterday.
Okay.
I'll do that.
I made margarita macarons.
That's a good idea. All right,
There might not be
that's a
lot,
good,
but it's
no,
what? Margaritas with macarons.
just try to get me to finish that RDA. So anything I can do to get that thing finished up would be a good,
We already have the form signed.
I know. All right.
Just come over. Wait, I'll get him to do a project or something.
Oh,
You fill out the paperwork and I'll be
My
good.
feeling's been
27 Hood
taken
Road,
from-
continued from, good evening.
We don't even have one.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Brodsky. I'm here representing Chris Scanzillo. Chris lives at 8 Ingrid Lane, and we're looking for a positive determination of jurisdiction at the St. George Coptic Church at 27 Hood Road. I think this is fairly straightforward. There's no question that there are wetlands located on the property. There are questions regarding the delineation, but it's clearly jurisdictional, and there's no dispute that there's been work in proximity to wetlands. So we're simply asking for a positive determination so that the applicant can come in with either an ANRAD or an NOI to delineate the wetlands and demonstrate that whatever work they're going to perform is in compliance with your performance standards. Fairly straightforward.
Amy, can you maybe we'll just jump to where you
Yeah.
are with this, just so you can let us know?
Sure, so we're recommending a positive determination.
Okay.
And the representatives from the owners of the property have told me that they're preparing a notice of intent.
Okay.
So I don't believe we received it today, but I'm expecting it soon. They're working on it.
Sure. Okay. Does anybody, Penny, you have
No,
anything to say?
it's very straightforward.
Lisa?
Not a thing.
Jen? Anybody in the audience?
No.
Okay.
So I make a motion for a positive determination. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Go.
Aye.
30 Surfside. Let's make sure I got the, on May
Oh,
6, 2019, during the 6:15 meeting at Town Hall, the Scituate Conservation Commission will act on the request of Elaine Brady for determination of applicability to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Scituate Wetlands Bylaw to build a new deck on property located at 30 Surfside Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Before we start, Amy, can I just ask a question? Why wouldn't that pool have been an RDA? Why did that have to be an NOI?
Because it was a land subject to coastal storm flowage.
There we go. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Dave Damrell, 30 Summer Street, Scituate. Here as the contractor for this proposed project. Elaine Brady at 30 Surfside Road. We are proposing to remove an existing open deck, size 14 by 8, and build a new deck, size 15 by 20, attached to the rear of the residence at 30 Surfside. We'll be digging 6 12-inch sonotubes, 4 feet below grade. Minimal impact, minimal disturbance.
6 sonotubes, is it? All right,
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Lisa?
Nothing.
Jen?
Nope.
Amy?
No, I mean, I think this is fairly straightforward. It is also in jurisdictional area because it's flood zone
Mhm.
on Surfside. So I would recommend the negative determination on this.
Okay. Anybody in the audience, this one?
I make a motion for a -3.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Got a
Thank
great
you.
guy putting up your deck.
Enjoy it.
Yeah, well, thank you.
He's the contractor, I think. So that's that.
We got 13 11th Ave for a deck.
Yeah.
So on May 6, 2019, 6:15 PM, the Town Hall Scituate Conservation Commission will act on the request of Edward and
Same
Trina
thing.
McHugh for determination of applicability to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Scituate Wetlands Bylaws to build a deck on the side of the house, the property located at 13 11th Ave, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening, Mr. Donahue.
Jack Donahue, 42 Sylvester Road. I guess this, is it RDA you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an RDA, so just quickly
I'm just
describe the
representing the
project.
people.
Yeah, so what are you gonna do?
Okay, they want to add a 6 by 24 deck. They have the deck in the back, which is 14 by 12 roughly, and they want a deck going along the side of the house. Do you have the plan?
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a door right now, it's about 5 feet up off the ground. There's a door going from I think it's a bedroom right now, but I thought it was a kitchen, out to nowhere right now. They just bought the house last year, and the previous owners were planning on building a deck, that whole inside corner there, which is 12 by 18. They have bond up there right now. It's pressure treated bond lagged to the house, flashed. So, but the new owners just want to go 6 feet out, so they come out that door and get to the other porch. And so I'm gonna take into the stairs now, coming off the back porch, which I would take and put them off the new porch, because they're in the same spot where the new porch would be going. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it would be,
Just
6 footing.
Pull this site up.
The alarm goes.
Penny?
No, I don't have any questions.
Lisa?
No,
Good.
I mean,
So this is also in land subject to coastal storm
Yeah.
flowage?
Yeah.
And that's why this is in front of the board.
Okay.
But thank you for coming, and I think it's a negative determination to do the work, so.
Good evening.
It's good to me. Anybody in the audience for this? Okay, so a negative's a good thing, Jack.
Okay, I was gonna ask.
I make a motion for a
What would-
-3.
Just to learn, what would be the problem? I mean, I have I've never done this before. I mean,
If there was a wetlands that was really adjacent to this project and you were, typically we have a 50-foot no disturb from a wetland.
okay.
So, but this is really just in a flood area, so if you're not gonna impact your neighbors, by putting in sonotubes and stuff,
Right.
you're not gonna flood out any of your neighbors or anything like that.
There actually
So-
is a footing in there now that they look like they had a 10-by-10 deck at one time,
Right,
but it's buried basically.
so,
Okay.
you don't really have any, other than you're in the flood area, and we just have to have the review
Okay.
to do that, but
Great.
you're,
Working.
you obviously still gotta get a building permit,
Yeah, that's all said.
but they're just waiting for us to sign off.
Yeah.
So now you can get that.
Tomorrow, we'll have it for you.
Okay.
Great. All right?
All right, thank you.
Good luck.
Okay.
So we have that executive session coming up, so I think it'd probably be best just to wrap up any other things that we have, and then we'll do the executive session right at the end. That way this fellow can go home.
Yeah, so there was a enforcement item on, and the owner had a conflict again.
Again?
So this is, yes. So maybe we need to decide what we're gonna do about that.
Yeah.
Maybe one more chance.
I would make that clear,
Yeah.
that it's one more opportunity to come in and see what they're gonna do. And maybe we've got no plans or nothing to restore that yet?
No.
No, but he's gotta do something, let him know.
That's
Yeah.
same.
It's gotta be restored.
I would absolutely say that's the
Yeah.
last one.
Well, I think he's planning, he wants it to be, a manicured forest, is,
No.
I believe. But I could be speaking out of turn,
Yeah.
because we haven't
Well,
heard
I
from
think-
him, but
Well, it's
somebody,
up
the
to you.
planner heard that, I believe, so.
Well, but we haven't received anything,
No.
and hasn't shown.
It's cutting
so-
on
Right.
property that the town has, so
Right.
to me, that's one of the more critical pieces. And I'd just make it clear, we're gonna do that, or we're gonna start
Not
our
gonna play
legal
games.
process to
Yeah.
move forward.
Okay, yeah,
All
we'll
right.
do.
Looks like we can do-
Tomorrow at 6, I'm taking a look at one on Grove Street, that they're working lawfully close to the resource area.
What, the one where they cut the trees?
Well, actually, there was a tree cutting out there today.
Oh,
It's right on, First Herring Brook, right near there. It's within 100 feet of that brook, right next to Henry Holmes' property on Grove, that stretch. But anyway, so I'm gonna meet with him and
Okay.
basically recommend that he get a wetland scientist and see how close he is.
Yeah,
But anyway, so I'll be out there tomorrow night if anybody wants to go. And I think you should vote on,
Pizza Palooza tomorrow night, I have to help out there.
Really helping out at Pizza Palooza?
that's a high school?
he's
Got
gonna eat all the
pizza?
pizza.
I'm surprised.
You are in high demand.
Yeah.
Don't you have enough to do?
Janet's on the chamber, and the chamber sponsors
Okay,
that,
there we
so
go.
doing my
That's a smart move.
diligence.
Yes.
I probably have to guide the back door, I won't even see any pizza.
So we have 5 orders to vote on,
Yeah,
and we have a request for a minor revision of 15 Fasten Lane. So on that one, they're just repositioning the house further off the resource area and moving the stairs, like one of the staircases. So I think
Okay.
it's a minor change that you
Yep.
can approve without an amendment.
Okay.
I'm gonna start off with, I make a motion that we accept the minutes of April 1st as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I make a motion, we accept the orders of condition for the amendment for 3 Driftway, the coastal bank stabilization is,
Second.
go for it.
Second? All in favor?
Aye. I make a motion, we accept the orders of conditions for 182 Central Ave as written.
Second? All in favor?
I make a motion, we accept the orders of condition.
That was off.
Oh, for the, cobble berm, this is 91 Surfside to 79 Seaside, Egypt, as written.
Second? Do we have a second?
Come on.
Second, sorry.
All in favor?
Aye. I make a motion, we accept the orders of condition for 4636 CJ Highway, that's a septic as written.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I make a motion, we accept the orders of condition as written for 133 Turner Road, replacing decks as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Request for the minor revision, I make a motion that we approve that 15 Bassins Lane.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The certificate of compliances, you're good with those?
Any problems? Or-
2 septics, yes.
Okay.
Any problems with them?
No,
Amy? Okay, good. All right, then,
We have any other business we want to bring up? I'm pretty good. Bruins are on. Lisa keeps dinging. So
Are you
what we're
having
gonna
a
do is
fight?
we're gonna go into executive session, and we're gonna take a roll call vote. At that time,
you can
we're
go.
being videoed, but there's no reason that he has to hang around for that, so. Yeah,
Yeah.
just give us a second to do this vote, and then we'll kill it. So, I'm gonna make, or you can make a motion to go into executive
I make a
session.
motion to go into executive session.
And so I want a roll call vote, so
Kenny Scott Pipes, yes.
Mike Snow, yes.
Lisa Gase, yes.
John Foley, yes.